In 1955, a working-class mother in Detroit could feed her entire family for 32 cents. One dish, one pot, 22 grams of protein, nearly double what a frozen dinner would deliver a decade later. Across America, 25 poor man's casseroles like hers kept millions of families nourished on wages that should have made it impossible. They were acts of culinary genius, born from necessity. Then, within a single generation, they vanished. Not because Americans found something better, but because some of the most powerful food corporations in the country needed them gone. A can of tuna, a handful of noodles, and a few spoonfuls of condensed soup. These were the building blocks of survival in post-war Milwaukee. In 1952, a 5-ounce can of tuna cost just 15 cents, egg noodles cost 9 cents a box, and a can of cream of mushroom soup cost 12 cents. For families in the shadow of shuttered factories, this combination meant dignity on a dime. A teacher from Milwaukee remembers her family gathering around the formica table, the casserole bubbling in the oven while the new television flickered in the background. The meal was modest, but it delivered enough protein to steady a household through uncertain times. Today, a chef might reimagine this dish with sustainably caught albacore, whole-grain pasta, and a crispy topping of toasted almond flour, transforming it into a gluten-free, high-protein entree that would fit right into a modern health food menu. In Detroit, ground beef was the anchor of the poor man's casserole. In 1950, 22 cents bought a full pound, enough to stretch across a pan of rice, onion, and tomato sauce. Polish and Italian families layered these ingredients, drawing on immigrant traditions to create a meal that filled both stomach and spirit. The smell of simmering beef and tomato lingered through Sunday evenings, as children listened to the radio and parents shared quiet relief that dinner, at least, was certain. The ingenuity of these cooks, turning a few cents worth of ingredients into a dish rich in protein and comfort, set a standard for thrift that still resonates. Today's version might swap in lean ground turkey, brown rice, and a dusting of smoked paprika, anticipating the clean eating trends of the present. Farther south, in rural Georgia, the chicken and biscuit casserole was a testament to resourcefulness. Biscuit mix cost just 9 cents, and a pound of chicken thighs cost 45 cents. Home cooks would stew the meat, then top it with a layer of biscuit dough, baking everything together until the crust turned golden and the filling bubbled up around the edges. For many, this was the taste of Sunday, warm, filling, and communal. A modern cook might use free-range chicken and whole wheat flour, adding a buttermilk marinade for tang and gut-friendly fermentation. What began as a way to make a little go a long way now stands as a blueprint for functional, probiotic-rich eating. On the Pacific coast, salmon loaf casserole made its mark among logging families and fish cannery workers. An 18-cent can of salmon, breadcrumbs for 4 cents, and an egg at 3 cents were enough to feed a crew after a long day's labor. The loaf, firm and savory, was sliced and served with a squeeze of lemon, its flavor a reminder of the rivers and canneries that shaped the region's identity. Today, the addition of chia seeds or a side of fermented vegetables would push the dish into the realm of superfood cuisine, showing that the wisdom of the past anticipated the nutritional priorities of the future. Across these regions, the logic was the same: stretch every cent, waste nothing, and feed as many as possible. Each casserole was a quiet act of defiance against scarcity, a proof that good food could be made from little. The recipes traveled from city to countryside, from immigrant neighborhoods to rural crossroads, adapting to what was available but never losing their purpose. These dishes, born of necessity, now stand as evidence of a kind of genius, one that turned poverty into plenty and left a legacy still waiting to be rediscovered. In the farm kitchens of Vermont, a single pork chop, priced at just 30 cents in 1953, could be coaxed into a meal for 6. The matriarch would slice the meat thin, nestling it among layers of canned corn, which cost 12 cents a can, and a handful of dried lima beans, 11 cents per pound. The result was a casserole that drew its substance not from abundance, but from careful calculation. Lima beans, slow cooked until creamy, provided both bulk and protein, making up for the scant meat. Corn, sweet and golden, added body and a touch of brightness, stretching the dish further. In these households, nothing went to waste. The bones from yesterday's roast flavored the beans, while leftover cornbread from the morning's breakfast became a crumbly topping that crisped in the oven's heat. In the mill towns of Birmingham, Alabama, the story was much the same. Here, a mill wife might rely on a pound of dried navy beans and a tin of salt pork, turning a few cents' worth of ingredients into a supper that filled the bellies of a family worn out from the looms. The addition of canned corn was not just thrift, but a nod to local crops. Cornmeal and corn kernels were staples, their price steady even in lean years. The casserole would bake slowly in the wood-fired oven, the scent of pork and beans mingling with the sharp tang of onions, bought for pennies from the market. On the docks of Mobile, Alabama, a cook might use the same building blocks: dried beans, tinned corn, scraps of pork, but add a handful of okra or collard greens, whatever could be bartered from the market at day's end. The casserole would simmer through the afternoon, thickening as the beans broke down, the corn lending sweetness and the pork a smoky undertone. Here, the meal was more than sustenance. It was a gathering point for families and neighbors, a way to mark the end of a long shift and the promise of another day's work. These casseroles were rooted in necessity, but their composition reveals a quiet mastery of nutrition. Beans and corn together form a complete protein, a fact that decades of scientific research would later confirm. In the 1950s, this was simply common sense, an understanding passed down through generations, reinforced by the price lists in every household ledger. The USDA's own bulletins from 1953 and 1954 show that while pork and beef prices fluctuated, dried beans and cornmeal remained reliable, affordable sources of calories and protein. The genius of these dishes lies in their adaptability. A Vermont farm wife might add wild greens in spring. A Birmingham cook might swap in black-eyed peas during the harvest festival. The core principle never changed: use what is cheap, what is plentiful, and what will nourish. Today, chefs seeking to revive these recipes find themselves echoing the past, substituting smoked tempeh or roasted chickpeas for pork, adding jalapeno or chipotle for heat, and finishing with a drizzle of olive oil or a sprinkle of nutritional yeast. The result is a casserole that could stand proudly on any modern menu, celebrated for its plant-based protein, high fiber, and low cost. In these forgotten casseroles, the wisdom of the past meets the priorities of the present. They remind us that thrift is not just about survival, but about creativity, resilience, and care. Each dish is a record of lives lived close to the land and to one another, where every ingredient counted and every meal was a testament to ingenuity. As food prices rise and fall, and as trends shift, the legacy of the poor man's casserole endures in every bite of beans and corn, every memory of a crowded kitchen, and every attempt to stretch $1 into something more. In Chicago's Polish parishes, cabbage was the backbone of a meal that could stretch a dime. 10 cents in 1953 bought a head big enough to fill a roasting pan, layered with shredded leaves, ground pork, and rice, all baked in tomato sauce. Parish aunts, guided by recipes scribbled in the margins of church bulletins, turned these casseroles into the centerpiece of fundraisers and family gatherings. The aroma of cabbage and pork drifting through the hallways signaled comfort, not want. Today, chefs might ferment the cabbage or swap in turkey and brown rice, but the spirit of thrift and care remains, echoing the wisdom of those early cooks. In Brooklyn's Italian enclaves, macaroni casseroles bridged continents and generations. 7 cents bought a pound of elbow macaroni, which nonna would boil, then bake with canned tomato sauce and whatever cheese was left in the fridge. Letters from Sicilian immigrants in 1954 describe Sunday afternoons spent around a battered dish, the golden crust fought over by eager hands. When ricotta was scarce, cottage cheese or evaporated milk filled in, proving flavor could come from whatever the pantry offered. Today's versions might use whole grain pasta, roasted vegetables, and olive oil, reflecting the Mediterranean ideals now celebrated. But the heart of the dish remains unchanged. In black southern churches, sweet potato casserole was a fixture at every gathering. 14 cents a pound brought home the orange roots, peeled and mashed with canned milk and nutmeg. Georgia church diaries from the mid-1950s recall the hush as the casserole emerged, caramelized and fragrant. For many, it was a dish of pride, stretching the budget, honoring the harvest, and nourishing the congregation. Modern cooks might add toasted seeds, coconut milk, or turmeric, but the casserole's purpose endures, to feed and to celebrate. Across these kitchens, the oven became a crucible for memory and ingenuity. Each casserole stands as quiet proof that thrift and tradition can create something lasting. In the heart of the Midwest, green bean and bacon casserole turned farm surplus into sustenance. In 1955, a can of green beans cost just 13 cents, while a quarter pound of bacon could be had for 22 cents. During harvest, co-op gardeners gathered what the fields provided: crisp beans, onions, and the last bits of smoked pork saved from winter. The dish came together in a battered skillet, beans layered with diced bacon, a pour of condensed soup, and a sprinkle of fried onions if they were on hand. Baked until the edges bubbled and the top browned, it was served straight from the pan after dusk, when the day's work was done. A co-op gardener from Iowa recalls the ritual. We'd eat with our boots still on, grateful for anything that filled the belly and used what we grew. Today, chefs revisit this dish with roasted fresh beans, turkey bacon, and a topping of toasted almond slivers, turning a symbol of thrift into a high-fiber, low-sodium side that fits the clean-eating movement. On the plains of Texas, cornbread and chili casserole was the ranch hand's answer to long days and empty pockets. Cornmeal, at 16 cents a pound, stretched further than flour and needed little more than water and lard to become a batter. Chili beans, 7 cents a can, were mixed with diced tomatoes, onions, and scraps of beef or whatever meat was left from the week's butchering. The mixture was poured into a cast iron pan, topped with cornbread batter, and baked over a wood stove until the crust split and steam escaped in fragrant bursts. For many, it was the taste of payday, when a full stomach meant another week survived. A ranch cook from Amarillo remembers, "We'd cut it into squares, wrap it in cloth, and carry it out to the fields. No one went hungry." In modern kitchens, the same dish might feature black beans, chipotle, and avocado, delivering plant-based protein and spice in a form that could headline any contemporary menu. These casseroles were never just about making do. They were blueprints for survival, designed to turn the unpredictable yields of land and labor into reliable comfort. Ingredient prices were not just numbers, they were the boundaries within which a cook's creativity flourished. The farm and the ranch table became sites of invention, where every cent counted, and every meal was a small act of triumph. In June 1952, American kitchens faced a new kind of persuasion. General Mills launched a full-page spread in Ladies' Home Journal that promised a revolution. The ad headlined the 5-minute casserole and instructed readers to put the mix in a pan, add a cup of milk and a tablespoon of butter, bake for 5 minutes. No chopping, no measuring, no mess. Try it today and save time for the things that really matter. Nestled between recipes and household tips, the ad did not just sell a boxed mix. It sold the idea that scratch cooking was a burden, that time spent measuring and chopping was time wasted. The copy promised half the work and half the cost of scratch cooking, inviting women to trade tradition for convenience in the name of progress. For families who had spent decades turning beans, rice, and scraps of meat into sustenance, this was more than a new product. It was a new philosophy. The boxed mix, with its tidy instructions and cheerful packaging, offered an escape from the labor of peeling, slicing, and simmering. But it also chipped away at the quiet mastery that had defined home kitchens. The ad's language, brisk, modern, almost clinical, stood in stark contrast to the handwritten notes and oral recipes that had guided generations. A former ad copywriter from the era recalled the marching orders. Make it sound like freedom. Make her feel like she is stepping into the future, not giving something up. The campaign did not just promise efficiency, it positioned boxed mixes as a badge of modern living, a sign that a family belonged to the new, upwardly mobile America. Yet behind the promise of saved minutes and spotless counters, something else was at stake. The wisdom of stretching a pork chop to feed 6, or coaxing flavor from a can of beans and a heel of bread, was quietly being devalued. The magazine spread, now archived in the Library of Congress, stands as early evidence of a deliberate turn, a corporate invitation to trade knowledge for convenience, and to let the marketplace decide what counted as progress in the American kitchen. In Savannah kitchens, chicken and rice brought families together. In 1955, bone-in chicken thighs cost 45 cents for 2 pounds, and white rice was just 8 cents a pound. Black mothers in Atlanta and Savannah relied on this casserole as a way to stretch every dollar. Chicken simmered until tender, its juices soaking into the rice, with a can of cream of chicken soup, 12 cents, adding richness. Frozen mixed vegetables, 10 cents a cup, gave the dish color and a touch of sweetness. The result was a meal that filled plates and left leftovers for the next day. A Savannah mother, writing in a 1957 church newsletter, remembered her children racing to the table, drawn by the smell of buttered rice and slow-cooked chicken. Nutritionists now recognize the balance of whole grains, lean protein, and probiotic-rich hominy as ahead of its time. In Los Angeles, stuffed pepper casserole was a fixture in Mexican-American homes. Green bell peppers, at 19 cents each, were roasted and filled with ground beef, 11 cents for half a pound, and 4 cents worth of rice, all bound with tomato sauce at 7 cents. The peppers baked in battered pans until their edges softened and the filling bubbled. For many, this was a dish for celebrations, each pepper a parcel of thrift and pride. An East LA mother recalled in a 1955 oral history how she hid extra vegetables in the filling, making the meal last through the week. Today's chefs might swap in lentils or vegan cheese, but the spirit of making do remains. In Providence, potato and cheese casserole answered the challenge of New England winters. Potatoes at 17 cents a pound and cheddar at 20 cents per cup formed the base. Sliced potatoes layered with onions and cheese, covered in milk, baked to a golden crust. Italian and Irish mothers penciled their tweaks into cookbooks, swapping in breadcrumbs or evaporated milk when needed. The casserole was dense, nourishing, and could be reheated for days, a quiet act of survival and ingenuity. On Gloucester's wind-beaten coast, a fisherman's wife soaked navy beans that cost 3 cents a pound in an enamel pot, letting them soften overnight as the boats unloaded. Salt pork, 21 cents for a thick slab, lent smoke and salt to the bubbling casserole. By noon, the kitchen filled with the scent of slow-cooked beans, a dish built for stamina, not show. For families shaped by the tides, this meal was insurance. Protein and fiber carried men through long days at sea, each bite more nourishing per penny than any frozen dinner that would follow. Today, chefs tinker with smoked turkey or kale. The core remains. Food meant to fortify, not just fill. In the foothills near Knoxville, a miner's spouse stretched every dollar with a liver and onions casserole. Beef liver, 23 cents a pound, was not a treat but a necessity. Packed with iron and B vitamins, it kept miners strong through 12-hour shifts underground. She would soak the liver in milk, layer it with sweet onions and a scattering of breadcrumbs that cost 2 cents for a handful, and bake it until the edges crisped. Nutritionists would later confirm what mountain cooks already knew. Organ meats delivered what bodies needed. Today's cooks marinate liver in ginger and miso, but the wisdom endures. Cleveland's Steel Belt saw egg noodle casserole as weeknight salvation. A box of egg noodles cost 24 cents, enough to feed a family when tossed with leftover meat or cottage cheese. Parents home from the mills found comfort in the golden crust, the noodles' protein and eggs providing more than bulk, a shield against fatigue, a way to stretch paychecks into sustenance. Nutritionists now praise egg noodles' complete proteins. Some swap in lentils or spinach, but the spirit of thrift remains. Beans, liver, noodles, these were not signs of scarcity, but of practical knowledge. Each casserole, precise in thrift and rich in nutrients, quietly defied the promise of convenience foods. A casserole from 1955, assembled from a pound of ground beef, a handful of rice, and a can of tomato sauce, delivered 22 grams of protein per serving. The price for that meal, calculated from USDA tables, came out to just 13 cents per 1,000 calories. By comparison, a modern frozen dinner offers only 12 grams of protein at more than double the cost, 28 cents for the same caloric value. The numbers are plain, but their meaning is sharper than any marketing slogan. Scratch casseroles were not just cheaper, they packed more nutrition into every bite, and did so with fewer additives and less sodium than their successors. In 1950, a family could rely on these dishes to provide both satiety and strength. The protein edge was not accidental. Home cooks layered beans with cornmeal, topped noodles with eggs and cheese, or stretched a single pork chop across a pan of lima beans, always with an eye to keeping bodies nourished. USDA's own 1950 nutrient tables confirm what generations already knew. These recipes delivered more protein per penny than any processed meal that followed. Today's frozen entrees, even those branded as lean or balanced, rarely match the efficiency of their predecessors. The average label in 2024 lists a higher fat content, more sodium, and a lower protein density. The cost per calorie gap has only widened. What was once a 13-cent investment in real food now demands 28 cents for a tray of starch and fillers. This is not nostalgia, it is arithmetic. The numbers lay bare the quiet intelligence of scratch cooking and the loss that followed its erasure. When convenience replaced craft, families paid more for less. The moral weight of that trade-off still lingers, measured in dollars, grams, and the memory of meals that truly sustained. As autumn 1956 settled in, a Fargo farm wife noted in her diary, "Yellow squash, 25 cents a pound." She sliced the last of the season's crop, layered it with breadcrumbs and onions, and tucked in sausage bought with spare change. The oven's heat pushed back the chill, turning the harvest's end into a meal that honored months of labor. For her, stretching what the land offered was both ritual and necessity, a way to feed family and mark the turning year. In Newport, A neighbor near the mill kept careful track of expenses. Green peas, 26 cents a can, only made sense when paired with leftover ham or a splash of evaporated milk. Her casserole, thick with roux and crowned with stale bread, became a staple as mill shifts shortened and paychecks shrank. Peas, chosen for their protein and bulk, carried the meal through lean weeks. The ingenuity in her kitchen, making do with what was at hand, echoes in today's interest in plant-based meals, though the ingredients have changed. Wichita's Harvest Cook closed out summer with navy beans at 24 cents a pound and Franks at 27 cents a bundle. Beans soaked overnight, simmered with onions, then baked with sliced Franks, a dish built for the demands of grain elevators and rail yards. Hearty, filling, and cheap, it fueled long days in the fields. In each kitchen, price lists became survival guides. The farm, the mill, and the harvest table all turned the season's most affordable foods into meals that fed both body and spirit, adapting tradition to whatever the year would bring. Turnips, sardines, and hominy once shaped casseroles built on resourcefulness and tradition. In the foothills near Asheville, a grandmother's diary from 1954 details a casserole that began with turnips bought for 28 cents. She sliced them thin, layered them with scraps of salt pork and a dusting of flour, then poured over milk skimmed from the morning's pail. Slow baking turned the turnips creamy, soaking up every bit of fat and salt. This was more than a meal. It was a celebration of what the mountain soil could offer, especially when winter pressed in. On the Provincetown docks, a fisherman's daughter relied on sardines, 29 cents a tin, as the centerpiece of her family's casserole. She mashed the fish with boiled potatoes and onions, binding it all with egg and a squeeze of lemon. Baked until golden, the dish was briny and filling, providing protein and omega-3s when fresh catch was out of reach. The scent of baking sardines mingled with the fog rolling in from the Atlantic, a reminder that nothing from the sea was wasted. In the high desert near Santa Fe, a Pueblo matriarch turned to hominy, dried maize kernels, 31 cents per pound, layered with green chile, pinto beans, and cheese if the week's wages allowed. Community cookbooks recall its aroma drifting from adobe ovens during feast days. The pairing of maize and beans offered complete protein, long before nutritionists named it. These casseroles, rooted in earth, sea, and maize, reveal the quiet ingenuity of cooks who transformed humble staples into lasting tradition. In October 1956, an internal memo from the J. Walter Thompson Agency, archived as call number JWT Camp 1956 in the Campbell Soup Company collection at the University of Illinois, quietly shifted the future of American kitchens. The document, stamped confidential, instructed Campbell's marketing team to integrate soup into after-school cooking clubs. For decades, home economics teachers like Margaret Wolfe watched as their lesson plans filled with recipes built around condensed soup, no longer just a shortcut for busy mothers, but a curriculum standard for children learning to cook. The memo did not just recommend a product, it mapped out a strategy to embed Campbell's soup into the daily rituals of American youth, ensuring that the next generation would reach for a can before a cookbook. The language was clinical, but the intent was personal. Establish brand loyalty at the earliest possible age by embedding Campbell's products in school and club activities, the memo instructed. The after-school clubs, once spaces for scratch cooking, became test kitchens for processed convenience. Retired teachers recall the shift with a mixture of resignation and regret. Wolfe remembers that they were told to teach the soup casserole in every club. The company sent recipe cards and coupons. Before long, the kids thought a casserole started with a can, not a pot. This was not an organic evolution of American foodways. It was a deliberate campaign to overwrite inherited knowledge, one that reached into classrooms, clubhouses, and the family table. The loss was more than culinary. It was generational memory traded for convenience and profit. As the archive memo sits in its acid-free folder, it stands as evidence that what vanished from America's ovens was not just a recipe, but an entire way of thinking about food, thrift, and care. Detroit, 1955. A factory wife comes home from the night shift, her hands rough from hours on the line. She reaches for her mother's depression glass casserole dish, pink, chipped, but sturdy. Into the pan goes a pound of ground beef, bought for 32 cents at the corner butcher, browned with onions. Leftover rice forms the base, stretched to fill 6 plates. A can of mixed vegetables, 9 cents, adds color and vitamins. Tomato sauce, 12 cents, binds it all together, its sharpness cutting through exhaustion. Each ingredient is chosen for thrift, but the result is more than a meal. It is a quiet assertion of dignity in a world where every cent matters. Oral histories from Detroit's factory neighborhoods remember this casserole as more than sustenance. It was a ritual that turned scarcity into comfort, a way to make do without apology. Children recall the smell of beef and tomato drifting through hallways, the clink of depression glass, the pride in their mother's eyes as she served a dinner that cost less than 35 cents. For families living on the edge, this casserole was both shield and celebration, a proof that thrift could nourish and that resourcefulness could outlast want. Today, chefs revisit the dish with a modern twist: cauliflower rice for fewer carbs, grass-fed beef or plant-based protein, a swirl of fermented hot sauce for probiotics. What began as a necessity now reads like a blueprint for wellness. Still, the heart of the dish endures, a tribute to the quiet power of thrift, and to those who made a dollar feed a family night after night. Today, nearly 38 million Americans face food insecurity. Yet much of the wisdom that once turned scarcity into sustenance has faded. As convenience eclipses craft, we risk losing not only recipes, but a legacy of resilience. These were meals built on dignity, nutrition, and extraordinary ingenuity. Honoring these casseroles means recognizing the quiet genius woven into every modest dish. What we choose to remember shapes the table we set for tomorrow. Thank you for watching.